And in a way, I'm even dodging the very fundamental question of what does it mean to be holy, which is so difficult to define because it's a quality that's characteristic only of God himself. And so we have no real experience of holiness outside God himself. And only inasmuch as we're brought into the realm of God do we begin to know what holiness is. But there are a few hints, and one of my favorite things in the New Testament is Hebrews 12:14. Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. Now, on the one hand, this is saying holiness is something you can strive for, but the holiness that we're striving for is the holiness that allows you to see the Lord. So God, who is a holy God, like antimatter and matter that come into contact, and you have this great explosion in the Star Trek world, perhaps in our own, if we find any, that God, when he comes into contact with unholiness, does not get destroyed, but that which is unholy is destroyed. And so if you want to stand in the presence of God forever, if you want to experience the beatific vision, if you want to be with all the saints and the angels around the throne of God in heaven, you're going to have to be holy. Because if you're not going to be able to see the Lord. And so likewise, Paul writes to the Thessalonians. And I didn't just say Paul wrote Hebrews, by the way. Now, may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. So there's an eschatological component of holiness, that when Jesus comes on the last day, like all those soldiers in the Garden of Gethsemane who fell backwards when he said, "Yes, I am." We're going to be blown to the ground if we are not standing in the holiness that Christ has given us. Do I have this one? Yeah. For God has not called us for impurity, but in holiness. And I think some of the Bible versions muck about with the prepositions there because they don't like the change. And they say, God has not called us for impurity, but for holiness. But that's not what Paul wrote. So the calling that we have is a calling in holiness, and therefore he has not called us for impurity.